Today on the breakdown, we keep it relevant. It's high-stakes poker, and that's only what? When was the first high-stakes poker? Like 15 years ago, 20 years ago? That's pretty relevant. It's poker. It's relevant. It's recent. So Texas Dolly is not in this hand. I made it sound like it was. No, it's from the very latest episode of high-stakes poker where potentially the biggest pot in the history of the game, I told you it's relevant, the history of high-stakes poker, not all poker, is played between Charles Yu and Nik Airball. Nick, as Grant likes to call him, Nik Scarehall. I don't know what that's about. And Nick, you see, this is where if you have the video, if you're watching the video on Spotify or YouTube, you get to see Grant's reactions, and he just made the eyes just got a little closer together, like the what is that? Why is he involving me? Look, it was all worth it. Go to YouTube just for that. Trust me. Anyway, it's one of those hands where, like, you know, sure it's a cooler, sure it's this, sure it's that, but money goes in and tough decisions abound. Well, at least there's one really tough decision upcoming. We promise. And it's coming right now, served hot to your door on the breakdown with Grant Dennison and Jonathan Levy.
Thank you for that opening. I just want to say thank you.
I don't know if you mean it or not.
In case,
I don't know how sincere that was.
In case you don't make it, in case you don't make it, I want you to know that I'm thanking you for that opening.
Okay.
Okay?
I might not make it.
You might not.
I feel it's questionable.
You're isolated on an island now. Who knows what happens there? I don't know.
Hurricanes.
You won't tell me. You
happen.
won't tell me.
I mean, it's a secret. We have to keep it secret. That's part of the deal.
It's part of the island. I have a question about Charles Yu, who is one of the players in this hand. Is he good? I can't tell. Is this guy good or is he a whale? I know he's a whale, but is he like a good whale?
I think he's a good whale. I think he's good in I think he's like a good player depending on the lineup. There's some guys who are just always the spot no matter what. We were talking about Alan Keating before the show started. I think Alan Keating's kind of always the spot in pretty much any lineup, right? Charles Yu is sometimes
up because of the new big game. That's why that came up. If you just watch the first hand of the new big game, which he plays against the loose cannon, it's like it's unfathomable to make the decisions that he made. It doesn't make any sense.
There's something to that, and I mean, if you watch any of the last 2 years of him playing on Hustler Casino Live, he also, is opening hands like 9x off, 9-4 offsuit and stuff like that, without really thinking about it, and it's pretty wild. So, but Charles Yu is not that. Charles Yu is much more thoughtful than that. I think he's a winner. I would guess. We could look this up, but I think he's a winner in the Hustler lineup. The Hustler lineup, not known for its pro level play, I would say.
Not typically, no.
I think if you put him in a lot of lineups on high stakes poker, he might be the second worst player because you're usually going to have one really bad player, and then but if Andrew Robles playing and guys of that ilk, Charles Yu is terrible compared to those guys. But you put a bunch of normal whaley or just guys who you see but aren't necessarily great. The Eric Persons of the world, I think Charles Yu has got Eric Person coming and going.
Oh, for sure. Charles Yu is going to put you in some tough spots, and not tough spots like this guy's always bluffing me and I have to call every time. Right. That's not a tough spot. That's just like a high variance spot. But he's actually going to be difficult to play against in a high stakes cash game or any cash game where you're deep and you're trying to win. He's going to
put pressure on you. He's also going to make thoughtful decisions. He's going to think about sizing and should he actually consider folding and, things like that. He's actually going to think about it for real, unlike, again, coming back to Eric Person, not to have him be our punching bag right now, but I'm just thinking about hands where he will bet and someone's thinking about raising the river and he'll take a chip and be holding it to throw in the call before the person's put out the monster raise, and he's not bluffing. He's not doing that to dissuade them. He's just waiting and is already throwing the chip in because he knows he's calling and he's letting the other person know that they're calling. Brett Hanks at one point, he was a hand against Hanks. I think it was on High Stakes Poker, or maybe it was No Gamble, No Future, about a year ago, where person had a straight, and the river completed a flush, but person didn't see it. So person bets his straight and turns over one card, and Hanks sees it, and Hanks
clearly has no No flush, obviously.
Yeah, and Hanks has a flush, and Hanks starts saying, "Man, you shouldn't have turned that card over. You shouldn't have turned it over." And then starts to put in his raise, and as he's doing, he sees Eric Persson with the chip, like waiting, literally moving his hand like this, waiting to flick it in. And Hanks adds like another like 15, 20K just before he does it because he sees that, and Persson immediately flicks it in, and it's like, I don't know if that's good. That seems bad.
I don't know if
do
that's good. You may no longer be welcomed at Maverick Gaming establishments after that.
You know, I welcome the coming feud with Eric Persson, although he does take people apart. Unlike
he does. He's kind of a scary man.
Yeah.
He's
yeah,
like
I don't wanna.
if he's gonna come after us, I hope it's virtually. Because if I were in the same room with him and he started getting angry, I'd be like, "Is this guy gonna do physical violence? What's gonna happen here?"
I would be worried about that, but I would get a few verbal shots in about the wetsuit before he pummeled me to death. I know that, but yeah, I would definitely. It would be bad. It would be violent. If he chose to be violent, I would lose. It's a guarantee. And if he chose not to be, if he just chose to be verbal back, I think I would lose that too. He's intense, man.
You would just cry a little bit. It would be fine.
I would be sad. I would be sad.
You'd cry.
I might cry on the inside. I might try and keep it together on the outside, but I would have lost, and everyone would know it, including me. Yeah, he would take me apart.
You would go home defeated despite having a lot more of Eric Persson's money if you were in the same game with him.
I would try and soothe myself, much as Woody Harrelson did in Indecent Proposal with the $100 bills, wiping the tears away, you know. But I don't know, man. The money only soothes so much.
Right.
Did you hear what he said about me?
Yeah.
You know.
He said you were small and weak. That's the type of thing that Eric Persson would say.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that hurts me when people say it.
Yeah.
Don't say I'm small.
Because if you're watching on YouTube, you can't tell because we're seated in different chairs. Jonathan is literally half my size. He's half.
Literally.
Yeah.
It's not that I am abnormally short. It's that Great is abnormally tall.
I am 7'3" and I weigh 400 pounds. So it's not your fault. Like
it's not my fault.
Yeah.
And of course that would make me, since I'm literally half your size, a little under 4 feet.
Yeah. And you weigh 200 pounds. Yeah.
I think it's a look that I'm going with. You can't see.
Yeah.
It's all thighs, by the way, because if you're looking on the video, you can see there's like, where is that 200 pounds? It's all
like
below the belt.
Well, because you do like the bodybuilding, lower level bodybuilding only, where they put like a partition over the top part so you don't have to work that out at all. It's like, you know how cyclists have the super skinny arms and the super buff calves? It's like an extreme version of that. It's disgusting.
Man. Every day is leg day in my household.
Yep. And also in Nik Airball's household, perhaps, because he's always got his bluffing shoes on, although he's not going to be in that position in this hand.
You fucked that one up. It's because he's punting. He's a punter. That's why every day.
Yeah. That's good.
It was right there. Yeah.
Have you been watching this season of High Stakes Poker, which features Nik Airball in a lot of it?
I have only seen the hands that make their way to us via our fabulous audience who always suggests hands via Discord or Twitter.
I have been watching it, and it's the only consistent Nik Airball content I've seen. I didn't watch his Berkey matchup. I don't really watch Hustler because it's so many terrible whales, and it doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
But I like High Stakes Poker, so I've been watching. I haven't watched the previous season he was on. Apparently, he was a big asshole, and they have a problem with that.
Oh, yeah. It's because Berkey was on there, too, and they were already feuding.
And Airball was getting super drunk or something and being an asshole.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's been many comments by Nick Schulman this season of like, you know what, I actually kind of like this Airball guy. You know, he may have made some mistakes in the past, you know, like referring to the previous season he was on.
Right. Right. What's your quick take? What's your quick take on Airball's play?
My quick take is he's a spew monster, but not as much as I expected. Like there is some thought behind what he's doing. He's not just an idiot. Like he actually has some poker fundamentals and understands some things.
Absolutely.
But I think more than anybody else, I think his flaw is based on tilt and risk aversion control. Like he's not risk averse enough. He needs a little bit more risk aversion. And I think he's definitely prone to tilt.
I haven't seen him at High Stakes Poker, except, like I said, a few hands here and there. But having watched a number of his hands from Hustler Casino Live, I would say he also, at least in the past, has fallen prey to the I'm going to try and win every pot possible.
Right.
To the point where everyone knows that, and so they hold on. Even for lots of money, they really hold on. And, like when everyone knows you're trying to win every pot, it's very easy to play against you, Like once in a while, you crush everyone because you have it, but it's hard to have it every time. It's very, very hard.
We know those guys, right? We've played with those guys. Everybody who plays enough live poker has played with those guys. And it's like the game plan is pretty simple. You hope to dodge the variance. You hope to make a hand, and it depends. Making a hand can be defined differently against some of these players. Like middle pair can be a hand where you call 3 streets in a 4-bet pot, right?
Yeah.
And feel comfortable with it, no matter what the results are. And Airball's the type of guy that maybe you make that plan against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas Charles Yu is not a guy that you make that plan against, right? He's like a little bit more thinking overall, I would say.
I think he is. I think so. Well, let's get into this one, unless you have more to say about Airball and or life.
Nope. Nothing left. So Stanley Tang just finished robbing the public of their hard-earned money and charging extra DoorDash fees, and opens to 5K under the gun with Ace of Diamonds, 7 of Hearts. So that's just him being a whale, I guess. It's Stanley Tang is interesting in that.
Yeah,
I think it's 8-handed.
Okay.
But he opens Ace-7 off under the gun. So, I think there's an ante in this game, but still, it's not good enough.
Awful.
Yeah. So he opens to 5K. It's a 2K big blind. This is a massive game. They're playing bigger than normal. 2K big blind. The interesting thing about Stanley Tang is when you watch him handle chips and talk and everything, he doesn't necessarily seem pro-ish, but he seems like, what he is, which is like Stanford, MIT, nerdy type of guy who's going to... But what you expect from that is like these GTO baselines and ranges and things, and he is not that, which is interesting because the way he talks and acts is very much that way, but he does not play that way at all, which is odd. It's a curse of having too much money, I guess, probably.
A bunch of things. We see guys like that though a lot. Where someone shows up and at the table, and you really think they're going to play a particular way, and even once they talk the talk, they do everything right, they handle the chips. And then you actually start to see what their hands are, and you're like, who are you? You're not what I thought, sir.
Yeah. Why did you open Ace-7 off there, Stanley Tang? Well, he did.
Yeah. There's
off of a 275K stack.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
Charles Yu is on the button. He's got Queen-9 of Hearts. He's got the table basically covered. He's got like 1.2 million. I didn't write that down, but that is the case. And calls, which seems like a fine call on the button. 3-betting would be fine too. Folding seems really tight. Airball is in the small blind. I should have written down his stack, but I sure as hell didn't. Isn't that interesting?
He's got a fuckload. He's got at least like 600 or 700K in front of him. I know that.
Yeah, he's got, let's see.
You should find out, though.
I can do the math pretty quick. It's like 750. He's got about 750. And he calls out of the small blind with 2 6s, 6 of diamonds, 6 of clubs. Sure. Here's an interesting decision in the big blind. Brandon Adams, who has, I don't know how much, but I think it's like 500K. I didn't write that down either. Apparently I failed at that. But it's a significant amount of chips. He has 2 jacks. Jack of diamonds, Jack of clubs. And he just calls in this game with these players. What do you think about that?
I think I understand it, at least. I would argue for raising most of the time with jacks, but I don't think we're going to get many folds from these players, right?
Yeah, but
what are we going to have to make it to get folds?
We're going 4 ways.
Can we?
Yeah, Airball sometimes
how much do you want to make?
Airball sometimes has like 10-6 suited, and he'll just fold. Like if we make it 28K.
Mostly he's going to call when they're all this deep. When these guys are this deep, they just want to see flops because they can talk themselves into the implied odds. That's what I'm saying.
He could go
like
really
50K,
big.
Right?
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Like 50K is like, I think, the number where you actually might get folds. Like Charles Yu probably folds Queen Jack suited for 50K, depending on how deep Brandon Adams is with him, right? Nik Airball, I guess, actually might be able to fold 6s now. Stanley Tang obviously is going to fold with his hand.
Charles Yu has Queen 9 suited, by the way.
But Queen 9 suited, sorry. But this is like what we have to do now. So there's like some money in there, but we have to 10x this to get some folds. And that's not great.
That
Jacks,
seems fine. It seems like the only person who's likely at all to 4-bet is Tang, and he's got the fewest chips. He's got 275. And knowing what we know about Tang, we can just be comfortable getting 275 in with Jacks against Tang. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah.
I think if we definitely have to get it in with him. And actually, the other guys are very unlikely to be 4-betting. So that's good at least. But it would suck to, like, when we could just call 5 to put in 275 and just be crushed, like, because Tang actually has it, like that would be a shame.
Yeah.
To put in that many blinds with Jacks, like, because normally you don't want to do that, obviously.
Yeah, but each game has its own personality, and I feel like this game's personality is you get 275 in with Jacks and you're happy about it.
I mean, look, I think this is a 3-bet, but I do understand that the appeal of thinking we're really deep, and rather than playing a big pot 3 or 4 ways out of position most of the time, I'm going to call, and no one will know what I have. No one will ever put me on Jacks. If I flop a set, it's incredible. If I flop an overpair, it's pretty good, and I can play carefully. Being out of position sucks, and it's gonna be multi-way almost certainly, even if I put in a 3-bet, unless it's monstrously big, which I don't hate doing. I actually told you that I made a 3-bet of not with these amounts of money. It was someone had made it $50 pre-flop, and I made it $475 as a 3-bet against a player, but that was the right player to do it against. I didn't have Jacks. I had a worse hand than that, but it was the right player to do it against. But these are guys who I don't think are going to consider folding, and very often. I don't know. I think it's fine to call here is what I'm getting at in the end. I think it is fine.
I think it's fine too. It's just against these players, it's not my preferred. I just want,
I agree.
Like in this game, if you're Brendan Adams, you're one, really identifying a lot with American Psycho, but 2, you are trying to get these huge pots going with these guys, right? When you have a huge advantage as far as the quality of your hand, because these are the types of guys who will just give the money away.
Yeah. But you can make the case at least that, like, we have the kind of hand that is going to flop. Like, once we see the flop, we're going to have a lot more information about our hand, right? About how good or how bad it is compared to, all the folks. And we can do that really cheaply. And because these guys are willing to put in so much money anyway, we might be able to do that cheaply now, and if we want to put in lots of money later, we can. We get the option to put in lots of money with a lot more information about where our hand is. So I at least understand it. I think I would 3-bet this most of the time.
Well, sometimes the flop lies to you. Sometimes the flop is deceptive and lies to you, as it is to Adams here, as is the 8-10-6 flop, meaning Airball flops a set, but it looks like a good flop for Jacks. There's also 2 hearts.
Thank God we didn't 3-bet. We were going to get fucked on this board, for sure.
Everybody has something. Adams has an overpair. Airball has a set. Charles Yu has a combo draw with Queen-9 of hearts. Mm-hmm. And Stanley Tang has a gut shot with the ace of diamonds, not the ace of hearts. So it's a significantly worse hand than if he had ace-7 off with the ace of hearts. You do a lot more with that hand.
Oh, so much more.
Airball checks, and I think there is an argument to be made for betting here as Airball.
Yeah, it's a really wet board. We also have the kind of image as Airball that we're not. It'd be shocking to get for everyone to fold. But this way we make it. This is the kind of board that you would think if Tang is like aware of GTO concepts at all, he's checking a lot here, right? He's supposed to check this board like all day long. Right. So now we're really just talking about Charles Yu. Is Charles Yu going to bet or not? Now, with the hand that Charles has, he's definitely going to bet, and we would know that. But like a lot of times this is going to check through, and you would hate that. You want to build the pot and also charge the draws or get rid of the hands like Stanley Tang's. If he's not going to, you want to either make Stanley Tang pay for it or go away. You don't want him to give him a free shot at beating you.
Yeah, my fear is Airball here is that this is just the type of board, which you're alluding to, that checks through a little bit too often for my liking.
Yeah.
It's a little different than if it's ace, queen, 6. That's a much different situation. Yeah.
Yeah. We would expect there's going to be a bet most of the time on ace, queen, 6. And we would expect there's not going to be a bet way too often on a 10 high board like this. Or not 10 high, excuse me.
It is 10 high. 10, 8, 6.
10, 8, 6. Okay.
Yeah. Don't you have it in front of you, Levy? Don't you got the notes?
No, I'm looking at you instead of looking at the notes.
You can look
I'd
at both.
Pay attention to you. Nah, I can't.
This is a generational thing. You just don't have the ability to multitask in the Gen X.
Sorry, I was writing a text as you were talking. I was listening, but I was also writing a text.
We're using T9. Saying? Did you use T9 to write the text?
I did use T9 back in the day, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was slower than not using T9.
I never used T9. I was like around for T9. I just didn't do T9. I did like the other way.
Yeah, I didn't text at all until modern texting came about. Basically, that was my move. Like I was like, this sucks. I hate this. And no one I knew really texted, by the way, until smartphones became better or became a thing, I guess. And then, well, now that's all we do, right? We don't talk to anyone.
That is a generational difference because I was definitely texting on a flip phone. This is like a very sliver of time generational difference because most people who are younger than me never had a flip phone. I'm like the right age where I had a flip phone in high school. And my friends and I would definitely text on flip phones. And it was just very normal.
But it took so long. It took so long.
It doesn't, like once you got good at it, it was like one of those things where like the kids could really do it fast. Now nobody knows how to do it, right? Nobody has any idea. But the kids could really just slam out a paragraph or two pretty quick.
This is why like things like BRB I guess were important though, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't have to
for sure.
type all that stuff in, yeah.
It's so much easier now. You can dictate if you want. You don't have to use.
I mean, it's been like that for a long time, the dictation. But yeah, it is nice. I mean, I don't even soon with this new GPT bot, you don't even have to. You just think what you want, and it'll write it out for you.
You won't even have to think. It'll take that over too. Congratulations. It's gonna be the Matrix. We're all fucked. Anyway.
That's not what
Nik
the Matrix
Airball
is.
I know, but in the Matrix we're all fucked. So in a different way, we're all fucked.
Are we though? In the Matrix, we're living at the height of humanity. We're the opposite of fucked. It's as good as it gets for humans, and even though it's not that good.
It depends on if you care about reality, or if you just care about what your perception is. It doesn't matter. Nik Airball checks his set of sixes on 6, 8, 10 with 2 hearts.
Fine. So we think you should.
It's not terrible.
You should bet a lot here, but it's not the end of the world. It's not. It's fine, but especially 4 ways. Someone is probably going to bet sometimes, and Charles Yu's likely to bet, so that's good.
Should Adams consider betting now that he's gotten a reasonable flop?
Yes.
Because he's got a range advantage and he can thin the field. Yeah.
For all the reasons we were saying, Nick should bet. Even more so, Brandon Adams should bet. Brandon Adams has a lot more to protect against than Nik Airball. If this checks through 3 ways, how many cards are we going to feel good about as Brandon Adams on the turn? Like almost none, right? We 100% should bet right now. How much is in the pot? Like 20K?
22, yeah.
22K? Yeah, we should bet. We should bet like 14K or something.
Yeah, I like it. Adams does not. He checks also.
Interesting. He's playing this weird.
Yeah, he's playing it very passive.
Yeah.
Stanley Tang apparently does have some concept of board-based checks and bets, and he does check.
Good job, Stanley.
Charles
has to bet here.
And he does. I mean, he has this board completely in his range, and he has flopped a monster combo draw. There's no reason not to bet.
I mean, so willing to put in a lot of money here. Yeah. Oh, okay.
10K into 22.
I would have bet a little more, but whatever. I guess it's more for his range though, so he doesn't need to bet as much as like Brandon or Stanley. Anyway, go on. 10K into 22.
Automatic check raise for Nik Airball, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, we don't have to, but I think being out of position especially makes me want to check raise here.
I mean, we are the effective stack between us and Charles at 750K, which is very deep. So it would be a little scary to get the entire stack in on this flop.
Doesn't matter.
Charles could have a bigger set. Yeah, but we would have to.
It sucks terribly. But on this board, with all the draws, and in fact, Charles does have all the draws, we can't fucking just let it go here. Also, we're Nik Airball. It isn't like we're thought of as a tight player. So Charles might be getting in with hands that, we have crushed here too, right? Like he could have 10-8 suited and be excited to get it in with us. He would be excited to get it. Well, maybe excited is not the right word, but I think he'd be willing to. He certainly would call or raise, if not put in a 3-bet sometimes. So yeah, of course we're raising.
Yeah, and like he could have a good 10 and not go away.
I don't think he would go. I think it's wrong to fold to a Nik check raise here with a good 10. You're supposed to call.
Well, Airball flats. He flats it. And if Brandon Adams was not Brandon Adams, I would kind of start to get this. Like if he was a guy who check raises a lot in this spot, then I would kind of like it. because then you can maybe get a back raise in against Adams if he had like a wide range that he's doing that with.
Right.
But he's not that guy.
It's a lot.
Right?
It's asking a lot to think that Brandon Adams is going to check raise here, like so you'll be setting the trap. I mean, it feels like Nick just thinks no one has anything. Charles is taking a shot, and he doesn't want to scare everyone away. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
But there's so many bad cards for Nick. There's a million bad cards, right? There's straightening cards. There's flush cards. There's a lot of straightening cards, and I don't know. And we're inviting at least one, if not both, these guys in. I really don't like it. I think this is a clear raise. Again, also with our image as Nick, like, come on. What are we doing?
It does feel that way. Like if you were Nik Airball, if Nik Airball had Queen 9 of Hearts, would he raise? Probably. Maybe not.
Probably.
Maybe he would flat that too. But like if you're going to raise hands like that, you should raise your sets too.
Yeah, of course you're sometimes going to raise. Like if we're going to have a raising range, this is one of the better hands to have in our raising range, right? We don't block top pair. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And we have a monster hand that we're willing to put in huge amounts with. We're out of position. Like everything about this says, let's go.
Well, he doesn't. He flats. So speaking of raises, should Adams consider a raise now? I mean, all that's happened here is the initial raiser is checked. Charles, you could have anything on the button. Usually has something that has some coordination with the board, but it certainly doesn't have to be better than jacks. And Airball can have a lot of shit flatting out of the small blind. It turns out he has sixes, but he could have a lot of things that we are really beating as Adams. Should we consider raising?
Pocket nines. I think we should absolutely consider raising. In fact, I think we should raise most of the time here as Adams.
Just to like thin the field and make things a little bit easier for us in the future?
Well, thin the field, deny equity, both are fine, Get value, right. Like all the good things happen here. Like it's fine if everyone folds. This is a tough board, and it's going to get tougher most of the time, right?
I guess.
Like what cards could come? A black deuce and a black 3? A black 4? Those are like the only really good cards. A diamond, I guess, like a low diamond. There aren't that many.
That's true.
We feel good
it's
about.
possible. It's possible that Adams fears Charles a little bit here, in that Charles, of course, can have a good hand, but also Charles does put people in tough spots, and they're very deep. And if Charles has anything at all, any draw at all, he might be putting in the 3-bet, and then Adams is going to just be in a world of hurt of not knowing what to do. I mean, if he doesn't want to go with just an overpair on this board, I kind of get it.
I mean, he doesn't have to go with it, though. He could check raise and not go with it. I think that's fine,
yeah, but
too.
If he might be concerned that happens too frequently, is what I'm saying. That he's just giving up equity.
I mean, I think by just calling, we're also we're making it very hard to win the hand 3 ways on this board. I think it's just hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it's possible, but we put in money now. I mean, the good news is it's all relatively cheap. That's the thing. Like we only put in 5K pre. We're only putting in 10K now. I'm saying relatively based on their stack sizes. We're so insanely deep that we could just say let's just play a small pot here. We didn't flop a set. The board isn't the board. I absolutely could be in trouble against these guys. It's hard to know. I'm just going to play it safe. It's 10K now. I get to see what everyone does on the turn. I close the action, which is good. Rather than reopen it, I get to. What'd you say?
Tang is behind him.
Fair enough. But Tang is very unlikely to have a raise here, or even a call. It's possible, but it's unlikely. I guess he could sometimes have a call, but we would learn about that too. For only 10K. However, if we put in the raise, by the way, if Tang has queens, I don't know, queens suddenly are in a very tough spot. We might fall out a better hand. Yeah, so that's a cool extra thing. That isn't really the reason why we'd raise, but we would get that kind of benefit. By the way, if Tang doesn't fold, we're done with the hand instantly, right? The moment Tang doesn't fold, we're 100% done.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're not raising for information, but that extra piece of data is also useful. We might fold out a better hand sometimes. If Tang doesn't fold, we shut down immediately. Those are cool things too, on top of just denying equity, thinning the field, getting value, all the stuff. There's so much stuff that we get with raising. I think mostly we're supposed to raise.
Yeah, it's a strange way to play the hand. It feels kind of like a 2002 way to play the hand, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I think calling's okay too, though. It's not the end of the world to call.
It's okay. It's okay. No, I think Adams is playing this funky and passive, but not terrible to go call here. I think it's not the end of the world. A lot of times it's going to check through on the turn, and we can either make a bet on the river, or it'll check through on the river, or we can check call on the river and win. With jacks. We do hold up a lot too, not against these hands, but against whatever hands these guys have in their ranges. We're doing fine against their ranges. But we could just have better equity with the raise. And, there's a lot of reverse implied odds at play here for us against their ranges, which is the problem, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway.
He calls.
So he calls. Okay.
Yeah. Tang is going to overcall with just the gut shot. And again, not the ace of hearts. He's got the ace of diamonds.
They're giving him they've sort of engineered the spot where it's like he's getting not the end of the world. He's getting 5 and change to 1 to close the action with a gutter. It's not horrible. The problem is it's a bad gutter, right? The problem is if the gutter comes in, like we still lose to Jack 10, right?
Queen Jack,
because it's a 10 high board, right? I keep thinking in my head Charles is Queen 10 instead of Queen 9, because I don't have the notes in front of me. Grant, are you upset about that? You got something to say?
Yeah.
You want to say something?
Yeah.
Right. So Queen Jack, but that sucks. Like because Queen Jack is a hand that absolutely would be here. Any of these guys can have Queen Jack. All 3 of them can have Queen Jack, right? Very reasonably.
Right. And also, like we chop sometimes when we get there, and when we're not chopping, we don't get paid that often. And by the way, there's only 3 cleanouts because the 9 of hearts is a possibility.
By the way, also, we get there on a clean card, and then the river's a heart or the board pair's on the river, and now we put all this money in. Yeah. I think what Tang is thinking is I get to close the action. I'm getting 5.2 to 1, and maybe my ace is good sometimes. But I think he's supposed to fold for sure.
I think it's a fold, but he calls.
If we had a 9. I'd feel better if we had a 9, but the 7 is bad.
I don't like either, but especially this. I think having the ace of hearts would totally justify the call, but that is not what he has. He has the ace of diamonds.
Agreed.
So he calls. The pot is 62K.
Okay.
Again, for those not watching and listening, the flop is 8 of diamonds, 10 of hearts, 6 of hearts. We've got 6s for Nik Airball, Queen 9 of hearts for Charles Yu, Jacks for Brandon Adams, and Ace 7 for Stanley Tang. The turn is the deuce of spades. It's one of those cards that you said Brandon Adams would be happy with on the turn. And Nik Airball, it's not a Charles Yu card. It's a Brandon Adams Nik Airball card. That's always what I'm thinking when I'm playing poker. Is this a Brandon Adams Nik Airball card or a Charles Yu card on the turn?
Yeah, it's a Nik Airball card.
It's an Adams Airball card.
Yeah.
Airball is now going to take the lead. He leads for 50K. I like it. I like this once we're here. I think it's cool. He got the safe card. He saw that we're still 4 ways, so there's still a lot of danger. The only player who has represented uncapped strength is Charles Yu. The other 2 players have not represented uncapped strength. It's often you're often going to hear from a bigger set if Adams or Tang has it on the flop. So
I mean, if
Yu is the only real concern.
If Tang has a set of 10s here, it would be like borderline suicidal 4 ways to just call and close the action, right?
Yeah.
And give everyone a shot at the turn. It seems nuts to do that.
Right.
So, I think we can feel confident that only you would have us beat here. Almost
and it's always. Usually a set of 8s. It's like he's going to 3-bet 10s with some frequency. He could also, of course, have 7-9 suited. I don't know if he's the type of guy who has 7-9 unsuited in this spot. I don't know enough about him to know for sure.
I would guess he only has 7-9, although they're deep enough. Maybe sometimes these guys talk themselves into some very loose button calls. But so maybe you're right. Anyway, I like the lead as well. I was thinking like Adams should be leading for sure on this card, but Nik Airball beats him to the punch.
Well, Brandon Adams is a genius, I guess, because he just folds right away against Nik Airball. I mean, there's 2 players behind, so that is probably a pretty big factor. Charles could do anything at this point.
It's pretty strong when Airball suddenly leads into 3 players. We have to be beating not just Airball, but the 2 guys behind us too. Plus, it's a super wet board, meaning like even if we're ahead right now, it doesn't mean we're going to be ahead on the river. We've only put in 15K into this pot. I think it's a pretty straightforward fold when Nik, like it's such a surprise that Nik leads probably. Like what the fuck? On this card, right? Like we're supposed, like I think for sure if Nik checks, we are supposed to lead ourselves here and not give everyone a free card because I would be very afraid it's checking. That Charles is usually checking the turn, right? And by the way, I think he probably is checking the turn most of the time. I think. So we're supposed to lead, but like the fact that Nik Airball feels comfortable leading feels like fuck that, I'm out.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's that many good outcomes for us, right? Like we have to get a clean card and be able to hold on. Which both of those things are difficult. It kind of feels like a spot like a double board bomb pot spot, like a 5-card high double board bomb pot spot, where it's got a similar vibe to where you like flop the nut straight on one board and nothing on the other board in a double board bomb pot. And somebody bets big on the flop and there's 3 callers and you're like, why would I even call here with the nut straight? There is no point of this at all.
Right.
It's kind of got that vibe. So
I understand.
Yeah. Adams folds. I like it. Tang folds, ending that wonderful adventure of his. Charles has an option here. It's still a monster hand. Obviously, the equity is diminished by 1 card to come, but Charles certainly recognizes that he blocks the nuts with the 9 of hearts in his hand, and he is entirely uncapped from Airball's perspective. So is there, being heads up, maybe there's less reason to raise, I'm not sure, but what do you think? Raise or call as Charles? I think this is a close spot.
I think I want to lean towards a call because it's so strong for Nick to lead into the field the way he did. Like, Brandon Adams folded an overpair. Now, granted, Brandon Adams had 2 people behind him, but still, he folded an overpair. We have a hand that plays really well as a call here. We are in position, meaning we can guarantee money goes in if we improve. A queen might be good. A 9 might be good. Rarely would a 9 be good, but sometimes a queen is good if we hit. Not often, but sometimes. I would be very concerned about raising and having to play for it all right now. How much that would just suck. We really don't want to do that with 1 card to come. We might have to fucking find a fold, which is just a horrible thing to put ourselves in, right? When we can call getting reasonable odds. Like, we're getting perfectly fine odds to just call right now, especially with implied odds as well.
Yeah.
I like a call.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. And that's what Charles does. He calls.
Yeah. Okay,
the
good.
River is
Charles, you.
The river is the card. Brandon Adams is very lucky he's not in the hand anymore because it is the Jack of Spades. And they are frequently panning to Brandon Adams as decisions are being made. He's looking very upset as Nik Airball bets 200K, but he's lucky. He's lucky that he's not in the hand because Charles has made the nuts. With the
I don't know that there's any way Brandon can play it that he doesn't lose to Charles. Like, that Charles isn't in the hand by the river. I don't know if there's any point if he 3-bets big enough, but it's like 60K or something like that pre-flop, which I don't really see him doing, 12xing it. Maybe Charles folds Queen 9 of hearts, but I don't know. I don't think 30K is going to get Charles to fold Queen 9 of hearts pre, and once we get to that flop, I don't think Charles is ever folding, no matter what.
It's kind of amazing. Right? Like, these passive plays by Brandon Adams, he ended up losing like 15K in the hand. He could have lost his entire stack to Charles Yu.
I mean, or to Nick. If him and Nick want to go crazy on the flop.
No, because he beats Nick. He makes a set.
Oh, right. He ends up winning against Nick. Wow. I forgot. Yeah, it is. I mean, maybe Charles folds if Nick and Brandon Adams go crazy on the flop. But would Brandon Adams really go crazy on the flop anyway? Probably not, right?
No.
He's not going to put in a big 3-bet. No. Anyway, so if Charles is in the hand and Nick's in the hand, I mean, it's like a miracle. It's like a Christmas miracle for Brandon Adams.
It is an extreme miracle that Brandon Adams loses only 15K in this hand. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's the case. Nik Airball is going to lose more than that. He is going to bet 200K. It's a slightly scary card, but I think betting is probably better than checking.
I mean, it's just Queen 9, right? That's the only thing?
Yeah, I guess 7-9 was already there.
That's not scary.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jack is pretty unlikely for Charles to have.
I wouldn't worry about Jack, yeah. I think, once in a while we're losing for sure. By the way, once in a while we're losing the whole way because Charles has 8s, and we're just already losing. And it doesn't matter, right? I think we have to go for value against 2-pair hands. Jack 10, if Charles can have Jack 10 here, if he can. 10-8 suited. I don't know what else we can get value from, really. Maybe Ace-Jack of hearts could consider calling.
Yeah.
That's about it, right? I don't know what else can call here.
Yeah,
someone who really doesn't believe.
Because Airball bets 200K into 162. Do you think he goes too big?
I mean, he's Nik Airball. He does these crazy big overbets with bluffs, so I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's
with
fine.
His image, I think it's okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that would not work for. I think for him, 100%, he often doesn't have it, in the past anyway, when he does this. So it would be not entirely believable for people, and he would get called by a lot of worse hands. for sure.
And
Ace Jack of Hearts would call him, I think, in Hustler Casino if he bet like this.
Yeah, probably. But Charles Yu doesn't have Ace Jack of Hearts. He has Queen Nine of Hearts, and he is just over the moon. You know that feeling in poker when you're in position and and you make the hand and the guy bets big, and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe he actually bet.
You make the best part of the hand. Like, you don't make the flush, which is scary. You make the gutter, which is so much harder to see. So much harder to see.
You can hope against hope that Airball has 7-9. You know what an amazing life that would be.
Yep. I mean, you can hope that he has a set. That's pretty good too, and he might call that too. It's possible.
When he bets 200K,
I mean, this is incredible.
We're gonna get into it, but it's hard to not look extremely strong with the line that Charles is forced to now take. Right? Yeah. He's just forced to take a super strong line.
And I don't think Nick is doing like Andy sometimes back in the day on Hustler Casino Live, or I guess it was not Hustler really. It was
Live at the Bike.
What is it? Live at the Bike, when him and Garrett would play. Garrett would overbet the river with a good hand, and Andy would have like blockers and just go for the all-in raise, and it would work. But Charles is not that guy. Charles is like, I've never seen. Maybe Charles does that a little, but I've never seen him do something like that. So, like this 200K bet, if Charles raises, which he has to raise, that should be a pretty strong sign that Charles feels very good about his hand. And then where are we as Nick?
Is there any optionality with the raise size here? Airball started the river with 682K and he bet 200.
I think we should just go for it and hope he has 7-9 at this point.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Like, is it really that different to make it 450 or 692? I don't know, man. I mean, like, from Nik Airball's point of view, it's a huge amount to call either way. You might as well make it look like you want him to fold. You know, you're putting more pressure on him rather than less. I don't know. I think you're getting called a similar frequency. Let's go for all of it.
I agree. And that's what Charles does. He moves in.
Good.
This is an awful spot for Nik Airball. Although I think it's honestly kind of elementary.
Yeah, like do we think Charles is ever moving in with Jack 10?
Yeah. That's the one pip down hand is Jack 10. And
I don't think he is. I think he's calling.
I don't think I don't see, like, when maybe if Airball bet 100K, Charles would consider raising to 250 or something with Jack 10.
Right.
But when Airball bets 200 into 162, it's hard to imagine a bluff. I mean, like, I guess he could have like Ace 9 of Hearts. That type of hand could be a bluffing hand, but it's not,
I guess,
that likely.
Yeah. Nick looks so strong the way he's played this hand. Like, why would you want to mess around? Like, he can just have a straight. Or a set that he's not folding, by the way.
So, does Charles only have Queen 9 and 7-9 here for value? Or does he move in with eights? I don't really see a lot of...
I don't think he would move in with eights here. I think he just calls with eights. What, like, to get called by what if we move in with eights? As we can see, sixes are probably going to have to fold, right? In fact, Nick does fold sixes. Let's spoil it.
Yeah.
So if Nick is going to fold sixes, then moving in with eights is a terrible idea. Right?
Do we move in with tens if we have tens here?
I think if we... The problem is 7-9 is there, and now Queen 9 is there also, right? So if we have tens, like, another thing got there that will snap us off. 7-9 ain't folding. Queen 9 ain't folding. Sixes really might fold. I don't know what eights are going to do. I think eights are going to fold, but maybe eights call. Because at least now we can have sixes sometimes, in theory. I don't think we ever actually move in with sixes, though. So maybe
I think Charles probably just calls with sixes in this spot.
Yeah. I think so, too. So maybe I don't know if we can even move in with tens. I'm not sure if we can move in. When Nick bets 200 into 160 or whatever it is, I don't even know if we can move in with tens. I'm not sure.
This is the value, along with getting value when you have a big hand when you're a guy like Nik Airball, there is a lot of value in this sizing. Like, it kind of handcuffs your opponent to being face up in a way, right? Because, like, we're talking about not raising with sets here, which is interesting, and it makes perfect sense. There's nothing Charles can really do about that. It's just whether or not he wants to establish balance in this spot, he can't without it being a bad play. So it's kind of cool that Airball manages to do that with this size bet.
Yeah. And like you said, maybe Charles has the one bluff of like ace nine of hearts.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe.
Ace seven of hearts too, maybe. King 7, King 9, Ace 7, Ace 9, all of hearts. Maybe those are his bluffs.
Pocket nines. I don't know if he calls the turn with pocket nines, though. He probably just folds, right?
Yeah.
So there's just not much there. So, okay. But even if he has those as bluffs, there's just not very many of them. There's like 2 or 3 tops, right? Yeah. Versus all the value, which is maybe it's queen 9 off even, maybe all the queen 9s. But it's at least 4 combos.
He called the turn. I think it's
he
actually
called the
just
turn.
Queen.
You're right.
It's 4 combos of 7-9 and 1 combo of queen 9.
Right. Okay, queen 9 of hearts only. Because the turn is not a diamond, right? The queen's a black deuce.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. So there's 5 clear combos of value, but there's like 2-ish combos of bluffs
2 to
that
4.
He has to decide, but he has to actually bluff with them, which he may not be doing. Anyway.
Right, because Airball could easily have 7-9, and Airball could have queen 9 of hearts himself. So
yep.
Yeah.
For sure. Airball having 7-9 here does make sense. He might play it just like this, where he's like, especially with he wants to see one card come up before he puts all the money in, because he doesn't want to play a $1.2 million pot or $1.5 million pot and with 2 cards to come against the flush draw,
where he's drawing dead on the turn. Where he's like drawing dead on the turn, no redraw.
He's like, let's wait till everything is in my favor. He's like, oh, the blank came off. Now I've got you crushed equity-wise. I'm going to bet more. I'm going to bet most of the pot, and you can call with your flush draw if you want, but I'm making you pay. And if the heart comes in, I don't have to put all the money in now. I can check the river, right? But if you want to get it on the turn, you're only going to get there 20% of the time. Great. That's a much better spot. So that would be a reasonable thing for him to do. Now, raising is obviously very reasonable as well on that flop 4 ways. But, if he called with 6s, he could really also call with 7-9.
Mm-hmm. Good. So Airball makes a fold, and I think it's the only play. It's a good fold.
I agree. I think it sucks your insides. I know that he thought for more than 10 minutes. I do know that because Robo called the clock on him. I read about that. Airball known for really long tanks now, by the way. He was on the Lodge where he had I think he had a straight or maybe it was a flush, whatever. It was 3 ways and 2 guys were all in ahead of him on the river, and he had a very strong hand, which actually I remember thinking he was going to call with, and he thought for 17 minutes before he finally folded. I think they called the clock and he finally folded, and correctly, as it turned out.
I have never.
So he's capable of making these big folds.
I have never tanked for anywhere near that amount of time.
The only time I've tanked for anything close to that was in a tournament, and that was actually on break. We went to break, so then I took a lot of time because I could. That's a little different.
Right.
Yeah, I think the longest I've ever tanked, even in a tournament or in anything, was probably I probably have done it for 5 minutes once, probably in my life. I can think of a few tanks I did.
I might have done 5 minutes once, but I can't remember it. It's pretty rare for me to tank for more than a minute.
There were 2 spots in the main event a few years back, last time I played, where guys were bluffing and they put me to a tough decision on the river, and I thought for a while before I called. Both times and won both times. But I was I only have 1 pair. I mean, it's not that good, and this guy's bet every street, and blah, blah, blah. And I really wanted to make sure that I was at least probably right to do it,
Mm-hmm. Well, Airball made a good fold.
Oh, it sucks because it's only the 3 offsuit jacks where Airball probably loses 200,000, right? If it's a heart, he checks. Charles bets. I assume Airball calls a fair amount even when Charles bets, but Charles probably doesn't bet $200,000, right? And maybe Airball can even find folds on certain hearts, maybe really scary hearts. I don't know. And of course, if it all misses, Airball probably bets anyway, though, and Charles just folds. So there's no extra value there. Anyway, good job, though. I like how these guys played their hands overall.
Yeah, I do too. I think I would have preferred to see a raise by Airball on the flop.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, but
me too.
But it's not like a death sentence type of bad play. It's just fine.
Right. And I was saying, because Airball only called, I thought Brandon Adams should raise. So he almost engineered this pretty incredible thing,
which would have ended
maybe
up
by
with
accident
him losing to Brandon Adams instead of Charles.
No. Brandon Adams would have found a fold pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? I imagine Airball's probably going to put in the 3-bet on the flop or lots of action on the turn.
Yeah.
And that'll be it.
Yep.
And Brandon Adams will go away. So
that's true.
Anyway.
All right. Well, Charles gets richer. Good for him.
Every day.
Hey. First time, no rehearsal. I say fuck the second take. 90s baby scratching on vinyls until the record break. Mr. One Night is all I need. No second dates. I'm the rapper most likely to make you type.